Funnily enough, the beginning of a group expedition is the start, for me, of a very strange journey. So much that could go wrong usually does. No one to blame but myself. God knows I try, screw up, try, screw up, try again. But it's the little things. You know, the weather, traffic congestion. No, that's not it. I'll tell you what it is. It's my own inability to compromise. You know, riding too long, riding too late, or too little. I'm a good starter. Never was any good at tidying up the loose ends. So here we are again. We're all looking for the big view. Well, trying to get on the ferry. I was late. Would you believe it? Me, the organiser. Late! Take it from me. It isn't easy trying to be on time. So we crossed the channel and ended up near Ardres, northern France, tucking into breakfast.
The news this morning that the Pyrenees are closed.
Pyrenees closed? Oh yeah. Still, it was strange being on the road once again, so soon after riding around North America on the American Dream Tour. It was like my life now revolved around dealing with new people on the cusp of an intense experience, and in some cases, making new friends. This is the time, though, when we're all waiting for the real start of the journey. After that, there's no holding back. Not until you get home. Roger is the driver and Ian the mechanic. I've worked with Roger before, and because he has a reputation for getting the job done, if it's humanly possible, I obviously signed him up again. Ian, I'd never met him before, but he's enthusiastic, a good man, and would be helpful if we had any serious mechanical problems. For the first day and a half, it was to rain. France was as sad as a country could be. But still we made Paris by lunchtime and the Auvergne for tea. Pancaked under a grey and leaden sky, we crawled into our hotel long hours after the sun had gone down. It had to happen. It always does. It was just a question of when, but still a surprise that someone had decked their bike so soon. Mikael was from Denmark. Maybe this is the way they ride their bikes over there.
Somehow I got into the corner too narrow. I mean, I had planned this corner okay, but then I realized that with the speed I got in, I couldn't get around the next corner. I mean, I didn't have much time to think.
He was just a lad, and one of the more unusual young fellows I'd come across in a while. And as we surveyed the damage, it was going to be either a salutary lesson or simply an indication of his riding skills. You ask someone if they think they're up to the job,
Okay.
and they say yes. Nothing more I can do. But one thing you can never fault bikers. They're the first to muck in if there's a mess. Sleeves rolled up, heads down for a nosy. There was nothing wrong with the bike. Nothing a bit of gas piping couldn't cure. Steve volunteered to road test it, and after taking it down the road, said it was okay, that it didn't wobble too much, and so we set off once again.
It seemed that Mikkel's machine was rideable after all. But the dropping of his bike had a calming influence on every rider for a while, and with a wet, slippery road ahead, a riding routine became the norm.
I had wanted to take everyone over the treacherous Col d'Aubisque, but it was still wet, and when you're getting to know a group of riders, what you really need is getting to know how they ride. So I opted to climb the Pico de Aneto and hoped the rain would back off over the top. There were 14 of us, all hoping to make it to the edge of the Sahara Desert. It was anyone's guess, though, as to how many would actually get there.
One French town after another slipped by. Mikkel was riding pillion, his machine loaded onto the support vehicle's trailer. The Dane's injured hand would recover, but for now it was too painful to use. And the rest of the riders were keen to get some miles behind them. The pressure was on to get down through France as quickly as possible.
The thing about any journey, any motorbike tour, is that to get to anywhere worth getting to, you have to do the distance. We had to ride across France pretty quickly. Not that France isn't interesting, but this time round, something called the Sahara Desert beckoned, and we hadn't got a lot of time, and we certainly hadn't got time to investigate the bars that litter every French highway. But every now and then, we did.
This means we're on holiday now.
Yeah.
This is hey, some more shade. So it's hold your breath when you go in, is it? Big breath. No, it's very fine.
Barney Kemp, who had completed the American Dream Tour weeks earlier with Nick, now joined the main body of riders heading south for the Spanish border. Here was a whole new bunch of people to get to know. This was all the more remarkable, as Barney suffers from a life-threatening kidney disease, and Nick wondered just how his health would stand up to yet another adventure so soon after North America.
Yeah, is anything in there, Nick? Yeah. Hello! See light through the other side.
Tunnel vision. You know what they say about it, and if you haven't got it on this trip, then you quickly had to find it. By the time we'd crossed the Pyrenees, this feeling had begun to crystallize, and the group seemed happy with that level of focus.
On the mirror, on the fairing. Got the fairing on the floor coming around that corner. No problem.
Is that what they say, how low can you go?
Yeah.
Steve was a natural gatherer of people. Bikers, by virtue of their vulnerability, always have one eye on danger. But as all bikers know, there's danger, and there's danger.
The landscape continued to change, providing more and more dramatic backdrops for the bikes. The distances were becoming greater, and the atmosphere amongst the riders did seem more relaxed. Speed and freedom, coupled with a sense of urgency to reach the southern tip of Spain, seemed to push each rider on across the flat plains which separate the twisting mountain roads, and each summit presented another valley to cross.
Son cosas que las tiene uno dentro, ¿sabes? Yo te lo voy a decir porque me has caído bien. Me llevo muy mal con mi mujer.
From my limited understanding of Spanish, I knew a sad story was unfolding. This chap kept saying that he was a bad man. It turned out that he was a reformed heroin addict and that his wife and children were dead. Quite how or why was beyond our limited powers of language, but what was clear was that on the same day every year he walked this road as a penance.
Mi sangre. Mi sangre. Sangre. Yo. Muy mal, muy mal. Yo. Muy mal, muy mal. Thank you very much. Okay.
By southern Spain, it was already evident that the idea of a unified way of life for all Europeans is presently as possible or as workable as, say, gaining a suntan on a rainy day, or ice cream in a desert. What I mean is, it's a long way off. From organic Romanesque churches to vast cathedrals and Reconquista castles, the regional diversity of this country is one of the biggest surprises Spain has to offer. It's not just about culture and artistic interpretations. Landscape is an almost limitless variable, from desert in Almeria, subtropical in Andalusia, and snow in the High Pyrenees. As always, I managed to snatch a little time for myself. Time to reflect, chaotic start, journey settled down. All I needed to do was keep track of people's feelings and nudge them along the right path for a visit to Africa. We've already got donkeys along the side of the road, and who knows what Morocco will bring. Always we're on the road between a crags and barren landscape. Even though it feels natural to me to spend most of my life on two wheels, I occasionally imagine what it would be like to simply wander around, high up on the hills, away from the engine noise, meditating if you like. I mean, let's face it, it's got to be the broader view. The view you can't get from home. The way of thinking you can't easily get looking out of the kitchen window. But having said that, bikers are a particular breed and already spend a lot of time strapped inside their helmet and therefore their head. And in a sense, they're already there, high up on the hills. The lads grouped together in a way that their workday life had no impact. There was a truck driver and a carpet salesman, a man who worked in the gallery, a doorman, a policeman, someone who ran a video store, and I don't think anyone asked anyone, what do you do for a living? What you did and who you were didn't correspond to the way friendships formed, and that had to be a good thing.
Right. If there's any ever any problems, we can nip up any of these roads, can't we, to get to them?
All right, we'll try to the right road.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. That's easy, because I can understand that. I can see the big numbers.
And we'll be in Rwanda before them.
There's a song there somewhere, isn't there?
We'll be in Rwanda before them. They'll take the high road and we'll take the low road. And we'll be in Rwanda before them. Sing.
Rwanda?
Rwanda.
The Rwanda Valley, probably.
That's it?
Yeah.
'The contrasts of European weather were becoming more evident as the riders continued south through Spain. At Dover, heavy rain had added to a tally that would see the highest rainfall in almost 250 years in the United Kingdom. Here in Spain, the evidence of climate change was also becoming apparent, with a parched landscape forming the riders' everyday environment. Experts have calculated that in 50 years, large areas of Spain will be almost devoid of natural water. Lakes and rivers will dry, and an arid landscape will return the country to desert-like conditions. In one lifetime, travelers south will probably not need to journey to Africa to see a desert.
"3 days from Calais, and we were already near central Spain. It would be important to eat and sleep well if we were to reach the desert on time. Morale was generally good, although some riders were beginning to form their own conclusions about how the group might evolve.
I think there's an interesting mix of people here needed, because there's going to be those people, because they're attracted to an adventure tour, are going to be a bit more independent-minded, and there are going to be those people who want to do a long road run and are going to want to stick more as a group. So it means that you've got to be prepared to form your own little parties on the run and then meet up, which is probably the one way of doing it.
Yeah, looking at the mileages on paper, it doesn't seem that bad until you actually ride it. Then you start realising how long it is. So.
The idea of riding with a bunch of complete strangers appealed. To see really, well, I knew my riding skills are not particularly good, and to join with some people who can really ride. Basically what I've done is just travelled until it was time to go to bed, or time to have something to eat and go to bed, and then get up first thing in the morning and away. There's no socialising at all really, whereas this is much better.
I was apprehensive about the trip. I've never travelled through France before. I have travelled in Spain on my motorcycle, and I've certainly never travelled to or in Africa, which is one of my personal ambitions, to travel in Africa. We're 3-4 days into it now, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's getting better as the trip progresses. At home, I do have quite a high pressure job, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this way of life. The hardest decision I've made today is whether to have tea or coffee, and that's as difficult as it gets.
Matt was one of the most able riders. His chain was stretching badly. A Scots roller would probably have prevented this, but equally because he rode it like it was the last day of his life. He sold exotic carpets in London, but that vastly underestimated him as a person. He moved along this expedition fluidly, and whatever I thought I was doing wrong, he made me feel some of what I was doing was going right.
The riders had been together now for 4 days since leaving their collective departure point in Dover. But trouble was looming in a most unexpected way. Roger, with the backup truck and the mechanic, had elected to take the easier and more direct route to Ronda, while always within striking distance of the riders on the mountain road, should any of them need mechanical help. Ironically, it was Roger who would need help. The Jeep support vehicle broke down in the very south of Spain.
Well, we've been to Gibraltar, just the other side of Gibraltar. I've got 2 bikes on the back of a trailer with 17 bikers, and we've just broken down with the Jeep. Yeah. Well, all I need is purely a hydraulic pipe that runs from the clutch pedal to the clutch. That's unbelievably, it's plastic and it's caught on the exhaust and it's burst. And we've patched it up and it's not working. I'm trying to get along in first gear. The road's absolutely clogged up. My Spanish is lousy. The dealers can't understand me. And this is why I'm coming through to you, my darling, because you're in charge of all the European Jeep service, and you said you'd help me.
Oh, really?
And so the pipe was dangling down next to the exhaust.
I see. So it should be clipped on, so it doesn't touch.
It should be clipped on, yeah. That's what I only assume.
It sounds reasonable.
Yeah. But I can, what I can do is, when we do it this time, we'll clip it back on.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm surprised that your main hydraulic pipe to your clutch is made of bloody plastic. As you always imagine they're steel or copper or certainly braided fortified steel, whatever it is.
Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah?
Still, just get the part will be away.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bugger when all the bikes are all right and you support them and you want to break down. I mean, so we're supposed to be supporting you, and you're supporting us now.
I made a personal note. Unbelievably, we cannot find the part we need anywhere in Europe. And it's all my fault. I'm going to get lynched. It's going to take a week to be flown in from the States. Having got as far as southern Spain, we now have no backup vehicle. Mobil had kindly loaned me my round-the-world bike to test drive in Morocco, but that sadly will have to stay behind as well.
The riders unhappily and reluctantly loaded onto the ferry without their backup vehicle. which had so far provided transport for their bags and, of course, the essential mechanical support should it be needed.
John was to become the gentleman of the tour. Editor, journalist, adventurer, mine manager. He was many things to many people and ambled along on his old BM with unruffled aplomb. Mark was from Chesterfield, a doorman by night, mechanic by day. Like most of the riders, Robert had a specific goal he wanted to achieve.
The mountains, the Atlas Mountains, and the desert. That's it. If I see those, I'll be happy.
The last trip was down to here, for me. To Leipzig? Well, down here. To Budapest? Yes. Bulgaria. Hungary.
Immediately you exit the Spanish colonial port of Ceuta, you're at the border point of Morocco, which instantly harbours a third world landscape, with running battles between police and refugees laden with gunny sacks of illicit goods. Poor beasts of burden they are, trying to make a few pennies. Up the road, a guy on a scooter led us away from the border, and 2 hours later, we arrived at the small town of Chefchen, checked into the hotel, and then wandered around the small Medina. Tailors worked into the night, following a pattern of life established since anyone could remember. The narrow alleyways hung with goods, and with that very metaphor for Morocco as merchant. After a good night's sleep, riders were amply refreshed and prepared for their first full day in Africa. I'd been deeper into the continent several times before, but not on a motorbike, and I wondered if that would pose any special problems. Andrew had had a tumble. His bike had touched mine, and mine fell on his ankle, and he was lucky, I suppose, not to have broken it. Without the backup vehicle, I felt vulnerable. Some of these lads were an unknown quantity, and having to carry heavy loads might break the Moroccan camel's back.
It's hot, it's squalid, it's smelly, but it's certainly a hell of a different experience. I'd recommend it to everyone, but only in very small doses, which was what I think I've actually got. I think we've tried to stay together as a group, which is fairly difficult, but if you can keep up the discipline, it's worth doing in a strange country like this, because clearly this is a place that nobody's familiar with. France, Belgium, Europe, no problem. But here, it's very different, and you need the collective support.
You have a good Qassam, you go by Moulay Idris after Meknès. Before you go to Moulay Idris, by Zogota, you know, Sidi Qassam, Volibilis.
Alone, Nick would rarely have asked a local person the way. Ambushing and banditry are a way of life in many countries. But by sticking together, the riders were unlikely to be attacked and robbed of their machines or their money.
Steve was a truck driver by trade and was the kind of rider who needed to know where he was going. After 12 hours in the saddle and in the dark, we finally arrived in Marrakesh. Marrakesh is a city of great beauty. Low-lying, red and tent-like, she is set against a backdrop of a shaft of mountains. Marrakesh is also the pleasure city, but it's a busy city where Berber villagers and southern tribesmen bring in their goods, spend their money and find entertainment.
Everyone was absorbed by Marrakesh and its myriad of alleyways, passages and narrow streets, which crisscross the city and intensify in the souk. As a Western person, all your senses come alive. You know you're now in unfamiliar territory. Here, men wear yellow slippers with pointed toes which curl upwards like an item of Ali Baba's clothing, and the women are veiled. And every few hours, the imam calls the faithful to prayer at the mosque. The motorcycles looked completely out of place, like machines from another time. Transport for many here has changed little in hundreds of years.
Matt, meanwhile, had decided to take a small group of his own over the Tizentest mountain pass, and we were to meet him and the other riders later.
We're going to head down the Tessi Pass, which is a notoriously dangerous and difficult pass according to the map. And then we're going to see how far we get tonight. Hopefully we might camp in the desert. We're then going to either head up to where you're going to be tonight, Aid Benadou, where they film Lawrence of Arabia, or we're going to camp in the desert and then go and see the dunes tomorrow, right down south towards Mohammed, and then come back up and see you tomorrow night in Tenerife.
It had happened before in Alaska and again in Nevada. On both occasions, riders anxious to fulfill their dreams had formed subgroups from the main party and had decided to strike out on their own. It was happening here as well, but Nick knew that this time the added pressure of the loss of the backup vehicle had added to a growing element of frustration. Nick remained in Marrakesh with the second group.
The central square of Jama el-Fana, which translates as the Assembly of the Dead, is a place to see a daily ritual of snake charmers, monkey handlers, acrobats, drummers, dancers, pipe musicians, trance healers and storytellers. It's a carnival of clowns. They all live partly by posing for photographs. But without the Jamai, Marrakesh becomes just another Moroccan city. The contrast between the clamour of the street and the search for the quietness within stands squarely on the shoulders of the snake charmers. In all the noise, they watch their snakes quietly like hawks, controlling them by looking into their eyes.
In the main marketplace, the Jama el-Fana, the life of these people as merchants and traders for centuries before carries on with little heed to the 21st century. In the souk, the experience intensifies. Stalls offer every imaginable type of goods, and in dark corners, deals are struck away from the public gaze. The house seller hangs the keys to properties for sale on a bare white wall open to the street, and unattended. But the keys are safe, for a man who steals one knows that the hand that took it will be lost if and when he's caught. Bamboo slats allow the stifling air to move and shield passers-by from a searing midday heat. There is still a belief held that a camera lens will steal your soul. And anyway, Moroccan traders understandably want a little privacy. After all, how can you barter and strike that bargain when the price of nothing is known until it is agreed upon? So Nick, Steve and John and the rest of the second group took one last look at the busiest city in Morocco before returning to their bikes and preparing to head away into the peace of the mountains.
The water carrier rings his bell, advertising that he has water to sell. 1 pitcher, 2 dirhams. 2 pitchers, maybe get a discount. It's a wacky way to make a living, and you don't even have to be able to sing. I enjoy my simple little wanderings. It reminds me briefly what it's like to travel alone. Ah, such joy. But now it was time to rejoin the lads.
Well, it's very hot in Marrakesh, and we're in the second group. We're going to go straight to Aid Benadou, which is about 100 miles, over the Tizen-Tikka Pass. So, there we are. Yeah, it's climbing into the 40s. All the bikes are running hot, and Marrakesh is just a most dramatically, amazingly busy, vibrant, colourful city.
At dawn, temperatures rise rapidly, adding to increasingly difficult conditions for all.
In terms of riding in traffic, riding through Marrakesh is, well, it must be counted as one of the ultimate driving experiences, in the most macabre, perverse sort of way.
What is this like, eh? A bit special, eh?
Well, I used to be used to the heat. I used to live in Zambia and I used to ride motorcycle into the Congo. But I'm really finding this very, very hot and very, very dry.
What do you think about Marrakesh, John?
Brilliant. Lovely. We went around it twice in the horse and carts. videoed the whole thing. I ran out of tape, in fact, I used so much video. It's endless. Brilliant.
Next year we're talking about doing the Arctic Circle, and it's becoming increasingly attractive. It's very, very hot indeed today. Goodness me, and I've got to put all my riding gear on.
Just oil yourself up there, Steve.
The golden bronze.
And if you like the countryside, don't come here.
The huge sense of anxiety we all felt was soon to be replaced by the awesome experience of crossing the Atlas Mountains.
Being out here and riding like this is just, it's unbelievable. It's like, you know, like being in a car is like watching the movie, and being on your bike is like, you know, being in the movie, and that's the difference. And this is wonderful. That village over there, look. Is that pretty or what?
Man has adapted the motor vehicle in a variety of ways in different parts of the world. A strip of tarmac may mean a basically well-organized road plan with a defined set of driving rules understood and accepted by Europeans and perhaps a Western-style society in general. But it can be very different in places like India or Africa. And here in Morocco, there was always a chance that a truck driver or taxi driver would make a decision based on feelings of the moment, rather than the rules of the road. But out here, in remoter parts of the country, Steve and John had been cornered by a group of boys who could spot a foreigner with money from a distance and knew exactly how to extract some coins with their well-honed skills. It hadn't stopped Steve losing his cool, as those unwritten rules about respecting space and property were broken. Eventually, this other form of barter was completed. In some respects, Steve had saved face. But the boys had completed their deal with some satisfaction. A bargain had been struck.
Listen, listen. No, listen. No, you do good. Oh, good. Bon. Oh, share it with them. Otherwise you get one of them. C'est bon.
The Tizen-Tikka Pass cuts right through the Atlas Mountains and takes the riders from relative lush farmland to arid mountain scrub made small by low average rainfall and sirocco winds that pierce through the landscape during the hot desert summer. There's no end to the bends and blind corners, and like the sister pass, Tizen-Test, which has a drop of nearly 5,000 feet in 18 miles, the Tikka Pass is one of the most stunning sections of road in Morocco and probably one of the most dramatic in the world. These passes were the first modern routes to link Marrakesh with the desert. And at the top, in the middle of nowhere, there was someone trying to sell us something else.
When he was little, they used to see him in the pram and give him tuppence to say, "Isn't he beautiful? Buy him a mask." Now he's got one.
It wasn't children this time, but this man was even more skilled at extracting money from the occasional passerby.
Can't come out of nowhere, did he?
6,000 feet up in the middle of nowhere. There's only one danger with this, Nick.
I wasted time them cleaning my boots yesterday.
If my missus sees this lot, she's going to say, "Oh, that was nice."
I suit you, dear. Certainly in Morocco now.
Morocco, huh? No, it's a shifted.
Steve and John had been hooked by another razor-sharp salesman, and once again a bargain had been struck. It was time to move on further south, toward the Sahara, and ultimately the border with Algeria.
In the high mountains, there you find quiet Morocco. gardens of peace, away from city streets. Not flower gardens, but cool spaces, giving the appearance of only one thing at a time being allowed to move, and giving the effect of everything else being completely still.
Well, I got lines because I didn't know the name of the range of the highest mountains in North Africa. And I got lines to do. So I've always remembered about the Atlas Mountains, and I thought one day I'm going to ride over the top, or cross them somehow or other. And I've just ridden over them today. It was great. I won't forget them now, sir, promise.
I think they know cigarette in every language possible, really, don't they?
Yeah. Piece of something or other.
Yeah.
So we don't get our own back.
Yeah, it was really spectacular. Really was. Quite amazing.
Well, a young lad selling something bright and red, and I thought, we have just had our ruby wedding. Can you believe that? Ruby wedding, and I saw these and I thought they were rubies, and I thought I'll just stop and buy those for Jackie. Aren't they beautiful?
Fantastic.
Beautiful. I don't think it's like, actually look a bit like a pomegranate.
Having passed long belts of date palm oases, we were now heading east across a bleak, scattered landscape with a mud architecture of Casbahs and fortified Qasur villages. In these parts, old caravan routes reached back to Marrakesh and Fez and out across the Sahara to Timbuktu, Niger and old Sudan, carrying gold, slaves and salt well into the 19th century. That night, we were to stay in a hotel in the desert, accompanied by the beautiful drummers of Al Barakah. There was a simple rhythm in the desert. Unlike busy Western society, it wasn't felt necessary that every waking moment of one's life had to be filled with something to do. Lead drummer Mahmoud explained the nature of his song.
Pour se marier, parce qu'on a joué une musique.
He said it was to do with the sanctity of marriage. It was a story of courtship in the desert. If, on meeting, and having been offered tea, the man prefers his tea without sugar, there would be no wedding.
Sans sucre. Si la femme, il est marié, il goûte, elle préfère le thé avec sucre. Parce que la femme, s'il veut marier...
If, however, he preferred his tea sweet, then marriage preparations would begin.
It means when the girl makes tea with sugar, it means she likes to get married. Then she makes a carpet like a litter. And inside she draw what she like in future. If she like to live in Sahara or in the village, how many children, all the important things in her life. So the first night when she go to meet the husband, she bring with her the carpet. And the first night she explained for the husband the design. In one side the man can know about the woman. In another side it's open the conversation between the two. It's a way to understand each other.
Hait Ben Haddou is at the centre of the Moroccan film industry. Local guide Mohammed explained how David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia was in part filmed here, as was Orson Welles' Sodom and Gomorrah and Jesus of Nazareth. Here, landscapes are routinely fantastic and film part extras exotic and plentiful. Meanwhile, the lads were enjoying their camel rides.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh,
look.
Dave's getting worried.
Dave's had a panic attack.
Do you see his face when the
camel, yeah, when it comes up and down, it's a real... It's the worst to get on your bike, that is. This is great, eh?
First time on a camel for me.
Is it, Nick?
Yeah, it is actually. So here we go. Me and Steve are going on the camel. We're at 8 Benadou and at the Casbah. And
Nick's wimped out and taken the small one.
Hey. Whoa.
So Steve's got the furthest to drop.
Comes that. Well, yeah, I've wimped out and got the small one. Steve, as you can see, has got the big one. Because he's a big lad. And I'm not. Anyway, here we go. Hey, shit. Ah, crikey, O'Reilly. Great. Oh, my God.
You look tired. What do I do?
I don't know. You're on your own, mate.
Ait Ben Haddou. Ait, ça veut dire, c'est le nom de la famille. Ben, c'était le fils de Ben Haddou et c'est une tribu berbère. Et avant, c'était habité par 3 tribus, berbères, nomades, Jews, Shuhud.
To think that we were in buildings of a Casbah dating back to the 3rd century, to a time when in Europe we still hadn't learnt how to wash. This required a change of perspective to one's sense of history. Here was that blueprint for medieval life. Local building materials excellently stood the test of time. Animals were part of family life. And in the way some of us keep our motorbikes in our living rooms, similarly, every household here would do the same with their livestock.
Yeah. Hobbled.
Every part of the house had a function to its form, and on the roof, in the time-honoured tradition of giving hospitality to your guests, this Berber household offered everyone mint tea. For me, this was one of my sweetest memories of Morocco. It was Morocco distilled to the simplest and purest way of life.
More tea, Vicar?
Good elf, lads. Good elf.
Riding northeast of Ait Ben Haddou, we found ourselves in the harshest and most desolate of the southern valleys, part of the great southern oasis route. Here, the road is hemmed in between the parallel ranges of the High Atlas and the broken black-red volcanic rock and limestone pinnacles of the Jebel Sahara. This makes oases, when they do appear, all the more astonishing, of which Tinarea is amongst the most beautiful in the country.
Little girl up those camels.
Oh yeah.
I mean, she must have been 5 years old, with a herd of camels out there. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere and there's a herd of camels.
When we saw them on the way in, they were about a good 3 or 4 miles down the road.
And
so we've been back for a shower, come back and they've walked 3 or 4 miles.
Yeah. Camels? Yeah, he forgot his wellies. He didn't bring your wellies with you, look.
While the group being split into 3 parts worried Nick, there was little doubt that those in the smaller subgroups had relaxed in each other's company. Life back home in England or Scandinavia all seemed a very long way off.
Hotel Timbuktu was for us our caravanserai. We were modern-day pilgrims in search of that different way of life. And in the dimly lit corridors, I kid you not, made my way to bed. Everyone had their reasons for coming on this journey. For John Horbury, it was to rekindle an earlier time in his life when he'd lived in the heart of this vast continent.
Well, I guess it's because it's Africa in perhaps in another shape or form to the Africa that I knew for 20 years. I lived in Central Africa, Zambia, what was then Rhodesia for 20 years. And Africa becomes a craving. You can't get it out of your blood. And the thought of being able to ride my own motorcycle from England into Africa was just, you know, too compulsive to resist. Space, I think, is a big thing. The warmth, the colors, the people, the smells, sights, sounds. It's difficult to describe. It just so poles apart from the secure greenness of Europe, I suppose. Like my friend of mine, Tom Kennedy, he rode round a blind bend as dusk was rapidly approaching down the Zambezi Valley in the escarpment, ran slap into the back of an elephant. Of course, wasn't carrying rear lights. During that time, I was a part-time policeman in the Northern Rhodesia Police at the time of the big riots prior to handover to to Zambia, and then I went down to southern Rhodesia, and then got involved again as a part-time soldier in a very, very aggressive and vicious bush war.
John Broadhead was using this trip to rehabilitate himself after a major riding accident.
Went into a bend too quick, lost it, slid across the road, hit a curb and broke my femur in 3 places. I mean, they took me to hospital by helicopter, only had, for the first 2 days, I reckon I wouldn't even make it. You know, it was really that touch and go. I broke both my wrists. They took me in, you know, the paramedics sent for a helicopter, the whole bit, and it was... I don't know any of this, luckily, because trauma wiped it away, so, you know, because you don't need that when you're biking, you know, that memory, but slowly I've got back into it, and it's, you know, it's really good. And of all the guys I know who had real bad accidents, they've, you know, they've all got back into it. I think we've all got a screw loose. Well, I did have. I had a screw out of my leg 2 months ago. I mean, you can blame everybody else but yourself, but basically I suppose it was my fault. But if your head's not straight, it's like everything. You know that, you know, if you're not thinking straight, your concentration's not very good, you don't ride too well. Previous to the accident, I was doing 10,000, 12,000 miles every summer. You know, we've done all over Europe, go to the Isle of Man every year. It's something that they've all got in them that there's no explaining. If you need to explain, you shouldn't be doing it.
It is said to be 63 days to the real Timbuktu by camel. That's 63 days across nothing but sand to a trading route that's existed for thousands of years. We had reached the oasis town of Tinaria, where our hotel name formed an evocative reminder of the harshness that desert travel can really mean. Hotelier and journalist Roger Mimo had made the reconstruction of this classic building his life's work.
The building had been restored using local materials applied in the traditional method. Earth is mixed with water and is called pisé. Wood is laid across the beams to form a platform, and an earth base creates the floor. The exterior is the same and protects against the rain. It also resists the elements for centuries. It is a style of architecture that lasts for generations. It's hard for a foreigner to understand people here, looking in as they do from the outside. Morocco is very deep, but the discovery of the true Morocco is to find a dream.
In his office, Roger, for me, painted a picture of colonial elegance. But reality told us his world was integrated with a way of life far simpler and dictated by the desert. Most of the group had decided to head directly for Fez. Either they didn't want to see the Sahara, or they were simply fed up with me. So that left Steve and I to journey to the dunes by Land Rover. I didn't realise it then, but Mikael and Matt were to join us later. Meanwhile, Hassan was to be our driver, while his brother, also called Hassan, explained what we were going to see.
We go to see the quarry and the nomad team and the big sand dunes and the oases. And you go to see the camels. Hassan is the driver. Inshallah.
First, we had to store away the bikes. The track to the edge of the Sahara was too soft for our little road rockets, so Hassan made arrangements for us to leave them in his garage. It was only 15 miles to Mazuga, but it was to take 2 hours to get there. We were 2,500 miles into the project and nearly at the point where we'd have to turn around and ride home. But first, the leg of the journey some of us had all been waiting for. Before long, it was obvious the road was bisecting a desert, a big desert. En route, Hassan stopped beside the nomad's tent where we rested a while and once again drank tea. The camels these people rely upon to transport their home graze nearby. And after finally wishing our hosts goodbye, they wished us safe travelling. Inshallah, it is God's will. We'd wanted to ride here, but Steve was on an R1. He would have given it a go, but it was soon apparent that only an off-road bike could have done it easily. It was strange being driven, but it allowed me and Steve to take it all in. And after all these years, being in the desert still excites me.
The huge expanse of the Saharan sands are almost impossible to describe. Only by being there and seeing them is man able to really appreciate their special beauty. There was no doubt that barring wars, people would continue to come here, seeking this special experience. And Hassan would probably have the job for life he desired. Despite the group being separated and split into three, Nick was unaware that Mikkel and Rob's group was in trouble. The intense heat was eating into their liquid reserves. They were lost, and somewhere on the edge of the dunes, one rider collapsed. Danger was close. For Hassan and his Berber forebears, living with the desert had been learned over hundreds of years. As sailors respect the power of the sea, so these Arab tribesmen know the dangers of the desert.
Zuga village, this village, we live in the Berber people. And then before he coming from desert, before living in the town. But when in the summer it's very hot, they living in the town. Now he coming living here with his wishes and everything. Inshallah.
How many days can go 1 month? 1 month without drink, no problems. Without drink. But when he drink, he can drink 500 liters. Family life is people, all the family live together in one place, and there's one of family who work for all the family now. For example, like they selling things for tourists like that. So some of them, they have camels, they take tourists to go around the desert to spend a couple of days in the oasis behind the dunes and to have a little money to buy food for the family. And the life here, it's simple, not like in big city. People live simple. They have all the family. They have to live together in one place, not separate. All the family, and they eat. They live simple, no cars, understand? This is, inshallah.
We are far from Merzouga, just only for 15 kilometers. 15 kilometers, and we arrived to Merzouga, to the big high dunes. Is near the dunes of Erg Shabi. The dunes of Erg Shabi is near to here.
How big are they?
For 200 meters.
Do you like your work?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because we don't have other work, and with this work, it's like when are you in holiday, always time with different people. Today with you, tomorrow with Italian or Germany or French or Japan or.
Will you do this for the rest of your life?
Yes.
The sand was getting deeper, but we were not far now. The first real sighting of Erg Chebi, one of the great small dunes of the Sahara Desert, was at last coming into view.
We were heading east towards the area we're in now, and thought we were on the right road. We started on a stretch of road. It was getting late. It was probably about 6 o'clock, bearing in mind that it gets dark at about 7. But we thought we could get to where we wanted to go in another hour, so we headed off. The section of road that we'd hit upon was potholed. It was tarmac, but it was badly potholed. So we started to suspect we weren't on the right road. Then when it did get dark about 7, we came to a village, stopped, asked someone, and it turned out we were a long way off where we were meant to be. We'd taken a wrong turning, probably 70, 80 kilometres back down the road. Anyway, by this time it was dark, so we put the tents up and slept in the desert. And then the next day we kind of assumed that the road that we were on, in fact, went to where we were trying to get to. It was in fact a shorter route, but obviously because of the nature of the road, we hadn't wanted to do it originally. But we assumed that the road would carry on as it had been, sort of pothole tarmac. But it gradually deteriorated and became very sort of stony in places. It's basically where the rivers cross obviously it's the dry season now, but when they do cross, they leave a lot of stones and rocks behind.
It took me a long time to be able to walk down to the farm.
Did it?
In fact, we rested in a little animal shelter to begin with.
Yes.
And then the farmer came and took us to his house.
We tried to rig a tent shelter, but it was too windy.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
And too hot under the tent.
I just wasn't able to get up and walk.
So we got some shade behind the bikes.
Right.
For Rob to recover, and take a little bit of water, until he could get down to the animal shelter, and from there we went to the farmhouse when the farmer came.
Great.
To the place.
And I wasn't too well either. I mean, I could easily drink a lot of water. We were short on water at that time, so when we got these fruits, which I don't know the name of, pomegranates, which I don't know what is in Danish. They were quite extremely full of water, so it was quite delicious and quite useful as well.
Mikel was an unusual man, so I was interested to know how he felt having arrived in the desert. Now just tell me a little bit about, 30 seconds of your life back home.
Well, I don't really want to put my life into Sky Television in a personal interview. I saw this project with Nick Sanders in Bike magazine, and I thought that might be interesting. So I just thought a little about it and said, okay, it's perfectly with the timing. So, and I wanted to get out and have a completely different experience, getting off of the daily routine, and not least having a lot of time on a motorcycle. So,
what does the desert mean to you?
Well, it's an interesting place. I mean, it's nice to see the Sahara and be able to say that I've been there, but it doesn't really mean a lot to me. Traveling miles and miles just to be able to say that you have seen something, I mean, it's not important. It's been a nice experience. It won't change my life. Most of all, it reminds me of sand dunes at home in Denmark, which is a lot smaller scale.
Sunrise in the desert is one of my most beautiful memories. A memory of a time when I'd cycled across the Sahara 15 years ago. I also remember that the morning had no equal except with the dead of night. And I'd watch stars and a starlit sky that I'd never seen before. There's obviously no sign of any kind of artificial light. You were hundreds of miles away from anywhere. And it gave you that very great, wonderful, privileged, private feeling that, you were on your own. And these days, human beings don't seem to allow themselves that kind of space. And also the silence, which allows you to hear not only your own heartbeat, but almost, as I felt at the time, your very blood coursing through your veins. I felt comfortable in the desert. I felt I could pitch my tent and stay there for weeks. I preferred a heat to the cold, but there was also a sense of timelessness which was deceptive, and that distorted any sense of reality that was still left in my head. There's something about the desert which I just love. I don't really know what it is, as well as the space and the silence.
It's just a very mystical sort of landscape, and a very pure landscape with the drifting dunes. It gives a very fine, beautiful, curving definition. You know, the shape and the form. At least we've made this journey happen. At least all the riders have got very close to the edge of the desert. Some are here, some are asleep. One's on the hill, on the dune over there. I'm here, by myself. The rest are on the way to Fez. We're all virtually on our way home. We'll have done 4,000 miles by the time we get home. We've done 2,500 miles to get here. This is the first journey to the edge of the desert. And I, for one, am delighted to be here. It's beautiful.
Not so long ago, after riding 13,000 miles around North America, riders of mine had enjoyed the collective experience of arriving in New York. That in itself was a distorter of reality, but something I personally enjoyed dealing with. But what particularly surprised me here was how few of the riders on this adventure didn't feel a need to experience the Sahara Desert in the way I would have wished. I really had wanted us all to be there. But clearly, unless perhaps it had been known before, how can anyone really appreciate the draw of such a landscape? That said, for me, it beggared belief that the vastness could be understood. It was a physical equivalent of something the universe chucked up out there in the cosmos. It was curved space and something to do with time. It was realness and it was unrealness, both at the same time, and so surreal that unless you planted your feet in the shifting sands, you'd have no way of giving your head a chance of knowing what it was your heart wanted to follow.